separate the real from the fake. See, we got to get back to love. If we get back to love, then that's when we're going to get back to us.
Seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when you're...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of People Empowerment, where we will try to change the conditions in our community. How is everybody out there? I hope well. Today we actually have a third part with our guest, our special guest, Michael Madigan, who's running for congressman. Michael is here again. How you doing, sir?
How you doing? Hey.
Good. Now, as you guys know, this show is a half hour, and that half hour seems to fly. So we're going to get right into it. I'd like to touch on a couple of subjects that we talked about in the last two segments. And the one thing was education. And Mr. Madigan, you had some things to say about education briefly again?
Yes, I do. Today there was a Buffalo News article where Brian Higgins contested my position regarding my enthusiasm or passion related to the education and what my motivation for pursuing that. And just to quote Mr. Higgins, he said, "Madigan's emphasis on public education is nothing more than a tactic to win votes in Buffalo's African American community." My response to Mr. Higgins is, and I'm speaking to Mr. Higgins now, is children's lives are at stake here, sir. This is a crisis. And this is the civil rights issue of our day in terms of the failure to educate our children. These children and young adults are your constituents. They are your constituents. I realize they do not contribute to your campaign, and they do not have powerful lobbyist groups, but you are supposed to represent them, and you do not, sir. You're not representing them. What you clearly fail to recognize is that not everyone is motivated by self-interest. Your neglect of these issues demonstrates what motivates you. I do not intend this as a personal attack. This is just what I contend most reasonable people would conclude. Your lack of action and your statements regarding this persistent crisis that spans your entire political career, which almost spans 24 years, and that has cost hundreds of lives and crushed tens of thousands of children's futures. Now I'm saying the education system, the failing education system over the last 24 years has cost lives. It has crushed children's futures. This is the civil rights issue of our time. I'm very passionate about this. I didn't just step into this. I've been doing this. I'm the vice president right now of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. I've been doing this long before I started running for office, and I am passionate about education, and that's how I became what is a black conservative group. That's how I became part of that, a vice president for that group.
Wow. Okay, well, you know, it is very important, like I told you, that you get your message out, you get your point across, and we have been in contact with Mr. Higgins' office. He has called us back,
right,
and we are setting up a time for him to come in and respond. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today with you,
right,
but I'll let you know before you continue that he will be responding.
That's great.
Okay, his office will be responding.
And what I would ask of him, and this is what I want him to respond to, now for 8 terms, and I've done a lot of research, where has he really engaged our public education system? What has he done to try and turn that around? We have lost years and years of opportunity time. We need to look at what's happening here. We do have unequal education. The vocational study programs are actually not in this system due to the BOCES.
Well, I assure you that he'll be watching the program.
Yes.
I assure you that they've watched the website and they know that your issues, and I'm sure they will be addressing them.
Just one other quick
okay,
point.
briefly, please.
Just real quick is, I've been to a lot of the meetings, the public meetings. They've invited our congressional representatives as well as the other politicians. Every single one, failure to show up. Kathy Hochul sent representatives. Mr. Higgins doesn't even send a representative.
Well, that's about to change on this show, People Empowerment. And hopefully we're going to contact Kathy Hochul's office too, and perhaps we can even get her in here.
Sure.
Now, but I want to move on quickly because I do want to go over the sheet that you brought in about your agenda sheet. But even before we get to that, there's something else that you mentioned about law and unequal law that you want to talk about.
Davis-Bacon.
Okay, let's quickly let's talk about the Davis-Bacon.
So the Davis-Bacon Act is an act that was put into place. It started in Long Island after some Southern blacks moved into Long Island during the Depression. And it blocks, by putting that law into effect, it creates what's called a living wage. It increases wages by about 30%. And it also increases infrastructure jobs by about 30%.
But what's the bottom line?
It blocks all the kids that we've failed to educate. The 80% right now here in Buffalo, 80% failure to educate African American males. They are blocked from working on federal infrastructure jobs.
Why is that? By not having a GED?
By not having a higher skilled education level that's required. Once you hit a certain wage rate, you need to meet certain educational levels.
Okay.
And our failed public education system results in them being blocked from being employed in those positions.
So that was the foundation of the Bacon Act.
Right. And if you were to either repeal or suspend that act, that would open up these jobs. Think of the $1 to $2 billion that they spent on the public schools for construction.
Is that in the power of Brian Higgins?
Yes, it's a federal law. It can be suspended through Congress. It would be driven by a congressional representative and/or a group of representatives.
Well, it sounds like a great idea from both parties.
Right.
So I will be asking Mr. Higgins about that. Okay.
So you suspend that. 30% reduction in infrastructure jobs. We have major problems with infrastructure, bridges, roads, et cetera.
Certainly.
We would see a boom in our economy and employment, and we would be employing helper workers that then could become skilled laborers, and long term they would have very good, well-paying jobs. That would be the objective.
It's a great idea. I'm sure it's something that Mr. Higgins will be interested in entertaining.
Sure.
I look forward to hearing his response on that. And now I want to move forward also to law and justice,
Yes.
unequal opportunity for people to get lawyers who have money versus those who don't have money. So if you could just briefly touch that.
Sure. So another one of my passions, when I look at what's happening with our legal system, I see court-appointed attorneys, with criminals, and they're criminals just like the high-powered attorneys are being assigned to criminals. So
Correct.
We're talking criminals and criminals. High-powered attorneys, especially ones, we're talking on the federal level here now, because that's what I'm focused on is the federal level. We have a U.S. attorney here in the West New York region that also is connected politically to his wife, he has a wife who's also politically connected. In the case of there's a number of incidences where when a high-powered lawyer is representing, let's say, a drug dealer, there's money flowing from that lawyer into the U.S. attorney's account. And there's also cases where just the opposite, a claimant, let's say M&T Bank, is donating to this political person, at the same time sitting, or in close proximity to a case associated with that claimant where money's flowing again. And it does result in unequal
So without calling any names, what you're saying is, in the case of the wealthy criminal,
correct,
he goes to the high-powered lawyers and
Yes.
he gets them to contribute to a certain person's campaign.
correct,
Because her husband is connected, U.S. Attorney's
Right,
Office.
and-
On the other hand, you get a criminal, unwealthy criminal who robs a bank per se, and the people from the bank contribute to the campaign
right.
to
So
make sure
let me
that
give
this
you
person.
just someone without naming names, but
Without
I'll name
naming
the case. I'm going to name the case. The JT Wheatfield's. It's a bar over in Niagara County. In the JT Wheatfield's case, there's over 17 transactions. There's 4 main players, and out of those 4 main players, they have 4 high-priced lawyers, every one of which contributed to this person's campaign. In one case, the person contributed over a 16-month period, thousands of dollars, and with 6-month gaps on the same day that activities in front of our U.S. attorney, there's money changing hands.
Do you have proof of that?
Yes, I have.
Do you have documentary proof that you can prove that?
Very solid proof. Yeah.
Well, then perhaps we can get those people in here and we can address that. Perhaps we could have you and we could have them
Right.
together and we could address that issue.
So
Okay?
that's on the criminal side, that's on the get out of jail free card side. And then there's cases where a criminal, where the money's coming from the claimant side, where the criminal has no clue that there's money changing hands. And I'm sorry, this is where I am passionate. There should never be money changing hands in the U.S. justice system, especially not when a U.S. attorney is sitting across from a major criminal case and that lawyer is giving money, and or a major criminal case where the claimant, let's say the bank that got robbed, is giving money to the U.S. attorney's wife.
Now look, I agree with you, but let's just cut it off right there, okay?
Understood.
You got it out. Let's cut it off right there, and hopefully we'll get those issues addressed in the future. I mean, you know what I mean? We like to have both sides of the story.
And I do want to just wrap that up. I think a lot of people know that money's, that high-powered lawyers can get a person out of jail, and then court-appointed attorneys
it's a well-known
commonly
issue.
End up going to jail for much harsher terms.
Absolutely.
And when there's unequalness like that occurring, we need to relook at how we're managing our law. So this one case is corruption, but in general, the court system is not fairly set up. If you have money, you get out easier than.
I absolutely agree with you.
Right.
And in the future, we're definitely going to touch on those subjects because I absolutely do agree with you that it is unfair. But now I'd like to move on, and here is a sheet. Mike Madigan, I know the camera can't really focus in right now, but this is Mike Madigan's agenda sheet for running for Congress. So I'd like to go over some of the points on it. Now, we've already talked about education, so we really don't have to touch on that too much basis. But what I'd like to talk about here now is encourage job creation and growth.
Right.
And what it states here is that we can do that by reducing the tax burden and excessive regulations on business. Private sector growth is the engine that has driven all past economic recoveries. Let me say that again, by reducing the tax burden and excessive regulations on business. Now, that sounds to me like something I've heard recently on television.
Yes.
From Mitt Romney's campaign. Okay? Could you elaborate on that briefly?
So, we know that New York State, the New York, we'll take Erie County as an example. We've lost 34,000 people. We've lost 33% of our manufacturing jobs over the last census period. We've lost a tremendous amount of jobs. Why did we lose them? What is different here relative to where those jobs are going and those people are going? We are the highest property tax, highest fuel tax, highest income tax, one of the highest road toll taxes, check every box. Now you would think, in theory, we're in New York State, very well controlled by the Democrat Party in particular, that if we're that high, that people would be prospering if it really does benefit the unfortunate. We are also one of the slowest growing, actually we're not growing, communities out of the top 50 cities. We are number one in terms of worst performance coming out of the recession, and we are the third most impoverished city in the United States. We're headed for number 2 or number 1.
And are you saying that you believe that has a direct correlation from taxes on businesses?
We are driving our businesses. We are not competitive with the other 49 states. We are not. We're driving people. We're driving.
Isn't this the issue that's going on all over the country, though?
No.
The same
issue?
It's
worse here. We lost a congressional seat here in Buffalo. Buffalo has, today, 3 congressional representatives. On January 1st, we'll have only 1. The city of Buffalo will have 1. No, it's not just redistricting. We lost a seat here. Why did we lose a seat? Because we lost population. And they're moving to low-taxed, low-regulation, appropriately regulated states that are prosperous, booming, and not impoverished like we are here.
Are you, so you are in direct relations with certain business entities, correct? Businesses, because you're speaking on their behalf. Would you agree?
I'm not.
You're speaking on behalf of business, though, right?
I'm small businesses.
Okay, but you are speaking on behalf of businesses.
I'm
right?
actually speaking on behalf of our constituents, which includes unions and everything else. We need to restore prosperity and jobs to this area.
So, do you believe that you don't believe that these taxes are necessary? You don't believe that regulations on businesses are necessary?
we need regulations. We need appropriate regulations. We regulate ourselves to the point of inertia. We can't get anything done. A bird, stops us from building a peace bridge. You name the effort. We are just so overregulated here in New York State, and in particular, just when Bethlehem Steel left.
So are you focusing on the country, or are you just focusing on what's going on here in New York State?
If I'm focusing, this is a role model of what we should not be doing in the rest of the country. We should not be overregulating, overtaxing, but there's regulations and then there's regressive things that are being put in place.
But would you agree that regulations are necessary?
Absolutely required.
And would you agree that in some instances, in a lot of instances, the taxes are necessary?
Absolutely, and I don't, I got to say, in terms of both parties right now, there's pledges being made of, I will not raise taxes on anyone under $250,000. The other team is saying, we won't raise taxes on anybody. All the Bush taxes have to be passed. What we need to really do is say, this is where we need to go. We have a big problem deficit-wise, and signing these pledges results in us sitting across the table from each other with irreconcilable differences. We need to work together and say, okay, someone's got to give a little, someone's got to take a little. And how do we get to where we need to go without destroying what is our growth engine, which is small businesses will grow us out of the current recession and deficits.
Okay, so Mr. Madigan, then do you agree that there needs to be some conciliation on both sides? Do
Absolutely,
and,
yes.
And do you believe, now this is an important question, do you believe that wealthy people would be hurt by paying a little more in taxes to help the rest of fellow man out, that we all say that we love each other, we're one country, United States, united under one? Do you think there's a problem with wealthy people helping out a little more?
So I need to be specific here. There's small businesses that we need to prosper. We need to make sure that we're not burdening them, and we need to ignite a fire under them, which is not currently lit, which means we need them to have some kind of a reduction in taxes so that prosperity then, we begin a rebound that's been denied over the last,
So you think that number, $250,000, is the wrong number? You think it could be a little higher?
It can't be across the board. We need to consider small businesses, and we need, what I really think is we need a fair flat tax, as it's called, and we need to really look at how we're doing taxes, which means, all options are open. Right now, we're at irreconcilable differences between the two parties. We are completely dysfunctional.
Yes, absolutely.
And for one party to say nothing below 250, and the other party to say we need to pass all, maintain all the Bush taxes, that's
so you're saying we need to find a middle ground.
We need to find a middle ground, and we need to say, in order to get to where we need to go, which is we need to stop spending our children's future money for our own personal selfish interests. And we need to do what it takes to do that without hurting small businesses, and actually not just without hurting them, with igniting a fuse that's not lit right now to drive prosperity.
Okay. Now listen, I was going to talk about Medicaid next, but I want to jump ahead. Because you spoke about the debt.
Right.
So I want to go to where on your list you have here, stop the runaway spending.
Right.
And it says that our $16 trillion debt is unsustainable and is bankrupting our children.
Correct.
Okay. So now I have my own personal feelings about that issue.
Right.
So now, what I'd like for you to explain is, where did this debt come from? Where did it originate at? Because now you're a Republican. Bush was obviously your man, right? Back when he was elected, right?
Yeah,
well, okay.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, when Bush took over, there was a surplus.
Right.
Now, once Bush got in, enacted his tax cuts, and we went through 2 wars, we lost our surplus. We acquired a deficit.
Right.
Now, with this $16 trillion debt, what responsibility do you think that it has on your party, the Republican Party, as far as creating that debt?
I think both parties are responsible, and whichever party's in power right now today, which is the Republicans, in Congress. Congress controls the purse strings, so Congress, I think, definitely has responsibility to drive and figure out a way to do the reduction in taxes. and the Republicans are currently in control of the Congress. Now, under Bush, both parties should have been continuing to drive towards neutral or a balanced budget, definitely. And like you said, under Clinton, definitely we had a balanced budget. We had a great welfare reform program at the time, which many of these things have been rolled back. We have hit an economic crisis. We need to be responsible. We're not. What we are doing right now, we are spending our children's future. We're leaving a country that will not provide the same opportunity that we currently have.
Okay, now listen, I appreciate what you said, and that is what we're doing, but we have to, I believe, go back to how the problem originally was created.
Right.
Now, the president we have now, Obama, said that he would cut the deficit, but unfortunately he wasn't able to, but it was because of a situation that he inherited. Now, would you agree? Now, because I have a reason for saying that, so I just want your opinion.
So here's my opinion.
Quick.
When he took over, it was a financial disaster. There is absolutely no question about it. He inherited an extremely difficult situation. We are on the 4th year. We all need to be, we got to stop looking back and saying, who's at fault? And I agree. There was a financial disaster when he stepped in.
And we were losing how many jobs per month when he came in?
700,000.
700,000 jobs, okay?
Right.
Now we're at a point now, 4 years later, where even though it's not a great amount of jobs, but we're on the plus side of creating jobs.
Right.
True?
No, we're really not. In order to be neutral, in other words, there's new people coming into the job market every day, and there's so employment needs to keep up with that. The number is about 250,000 to be neutral. We are well below 200,000 jobs being created on a.
That's true.
So that means that we are losing ground. We're not gaining. Even though 114 sounds like a lot, it's not.
Listen, right. But isn't a part of that why we're not gaining is because our Congress, Republican Congress, has obstructed the president and everything he's tried to do. I mean, we have a record here of this is the highest amount of times where a Congress has gone against the president and everything he's decided to do, they said no. Now, doesn't there come a point now where you have to say yes? Isn't that what you were just talking about in our state?
So here's my
compromise?
Response. President Obama submitted a budget. I believe 99 out of 100 senators voted against it. So that includes the Senate is controlled by the Democrats.
That's true.
So I mean, in both cases. So my answer to you is, the president, the Congress. We have an extremely dysfunctional Congress. It is controlled by Republicans. But it's also both teams have to work together to reconcile it. Right now, they're dysfunctional and they are failing miserably. And I think we should replace all of them.
No, I like that. And I think we should replace all of them too. That's
because
right. Just start
now,
over again.
The pledges and everything else that's been done is
like
dysfunctional. Okay. And right now, this is what's happening, and this is where I'm passionate too.
I'm sorry, but
you'll agree with this.
Okay, you got to give it to me quick. You got to give it to me quick.
Are controlling everybody. It's not constituent space. It's not. It's our representation by the people is no longer in existence.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Oh, I see now we need more time already. Now look, I got to move on. Rein in the job-killing EPA and restore its mission to protect the environment.
Absolutely.
Now look, I really take that to heart because I look at it like this. Now, and this is only my opinion. I look at it as that those businesses and corporations, especially the oil company, was destroying our earth by their pursuit of oil and the way they were going at it. And it was all about making money and not even caring, even if the world got destroyed, as long as they make money. Now, when do we draw the line between saving our earth and making money? Now, I really want you to answer me on this.
So the answer is, let's just start with EPA, the ethanol mandate. The ethanol mandate right now is at 10% of our fuel. Now it's going to go to 20%. Billions and billions of tons of nitrogen fertilizers going on the ground. We have a dead zone forming in the Gulf of Mexico. It is extremely damaging, pesticides and everything else, and it does not save fossil fuel. And in terms of, when you're talking fracking, you're putting a hole in the ground. You might have groundwater contamination of an acre. It is so not measurable relative to what we're doing with ethanol. and the damage we're doing to the environment, including a dead zone forming off of Cleveland in Lake Erie. We're over-fertilizing the lakes. It's extremely dangerous, or not dangerous, damaging to the environment. Mm-hmm. We need to look at proper regulation. We need to properly regulate fracking, the oil industry, and we need to make sure that we're being responsible. But right now, we're walking away from prosperity here in New York State. We would boom. Every other, I mean, Pennsylvania, North Dakota. We're shooting ourselves in the foot right here.
But again, it has to be, the more important thing is the survival of our earth over profits, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's important.
Okay, we got to remember that.
I'm going to say right now, fisheries and wildlife, I know about watershed management and what have you. We're talking a hole in the ground, going straight down. Let's just say it's the size of this room. The footprint there and the damage you're doing is not measurable. The damage we're doing with ethanol, extremely measurable. Once again, it's special interest driven. The EPA is mandating ethanol.
Do you have proof about that fracking? Documentary proof that it's not measurable?
UB just did a study, and a lot of people are denying it, but it was a scientific study. And you know, you got to go by science.
Can you get the paperwork on that?
Absolutely, yes.
UB I'd be
released
interested
a
in seeing
study this year that demonstrates that many of the claims are older wells with I mean, when I say older, just so everyone's clear, we have been fracking since 1950. We have been fracking since 1950.
Well, that's a long time. Look,
Right.
now, last couple minutes. Now we got to get on Obamacare versus health care. Now, of course, I'm in favor of everybody having health care. I'm in favor of Obamacare. That's my opinion.
Yep.
Now, apparently, from your agenda sheet, you are not. So, tell us about it real quickly. Why not? Because we only got about 3 minutes left.
Okay, so it's not affordable, it's not sustainable. It's called the Affordability Act, not Obamacare. But the Affordability Act, if it's truly designed to cut costs, where is legal reform so that we're not doing defensive medicine? Where is cross-state competition? Where is health savings accounts, which are, those are the three top.
When we had competition, though, it was out of hand. The prices they were charging was out of hand. It was,
the last
what's
3 years, the cost has gone up faster than prior to the Affordability Act being passed. Just as an example, when it was passed, it was $900 billion. We are at $2.6 trillion now for the cost over 10 years for this plan. It's almost tripled. We've never seen that kind of increase in cost in the history of the United States.
If it worked in Massachusetts for Romney, then why can't it work now?
I'm all for states-based reforms, and that's what I would support and drive. And you know, what they've done in Massachusetts might be a viable model.
Do you believe
it should be states-driven? It should not be federal.
Do you believe that the $1,716 million came, that Obama took that from somewhere? You don't believe that he took that from the people who were overcharging, that he regulated the overcharging of the insurance companies, the overcharging by doctors? You don't believe that money came from there? You believe it came?
717?
Yes, the 716. You believe it? Where did it come from if it didn't come from there?
It's coming right out of Medicare Advantage programs.
Come on now.
They're basically cutting them. I mean, they're being cut. The Medicare Advantage program, if you take $750 billion out of any program, you're gutting it.
But what about the fact that money was going to overpayments? It was going to doctors, overcharging. It was going to insurance companies. What about that part?
True.
Why isn't it true? Why wouldn't that be true?
It's just not true.
Well, do you have facts to prove that? Documentary evidence?
So one of the cuts is 21% doc fix, it's called. And that doc fix is... Sorry, Mike.
Run
out of time.
Sorry, Mike. Already again, we're out of time.
That's
unbelievable as it may seem.
Yep.
Listen, I'm Nate Boyd, from People Empowerment. We try to get it on. I try to stay neutral. I love to get both sides of an issue. Like I said, we're looking forward to Brian Higgins coming on and talking about his position on these issues. I hope you out there, you are paying attention to what's going on. I hope you are listening. This information is very important. So from Nate Boyd to the rest of the public out there, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention.